Hey, good morning. This is Amazon Jude coming to you from Casper, Wyoming. And I wanted to thank Representative Brian Bibin, R of Texas, for introducing the bill in the House of Representatives on July 18th, seeking a delay in the electronic logging mandate for 2 years. The bill is Hr-3282, and it's called the ELD Extension Act of 2017. As of Wednesday, this is back in July, 13 co-sponsors already, and I want to thank each and every one of you because it's the right thing to do. I myself have read the report put forth in Congress to have passed the mandate in the beginning of it back in April of 2014. And let's just say that the report is not exactly accurate. They have no proof that these will even prevent accidents. They didn't follow through on any of the studies that they told that commission that they would. And here it is 3 years later, and the deadline's up in 4 months, and it's going to put millions of truck drivers out of jobs because people just aren't going to go for this. It's over-restrictive. It's fuzzy at best. There's over 20 states that haven't even passed the laws yet to mandate these to be imposed. There's going to be problems with a lot of the states as far as the cops being ready to plug into these devices, and it's going to cost over $2 billion for the initial investment in this. And frankly, I don't think Americans or truckers deserve any more restrictions on their driving as it is. It's the representatives that I want to thank here today is Representative Rick W. Allen, R of Georgia, Representative Glenn Grossman, R Wisconsin, Representative Steve King, R Iowa, Representative Doug LaMaffa, California, Representative Frank D. Lucas, R Kentucky, Representative Ralph Norman, R South Carolina, Representative Tom Macy of R Kentucky, Frank D. Lucas, R Oklahoma, Bill Posey, R Florida, Steve Stivers, R Ohio, and the R is meaning Republican. So these guys are all really good to keep in office, and I think if they're up for election for higher offices, each and every one of us Trump supporters should back them all the way. I'll post pictures of them as soon as I get them all downloaded. Next was Randy K. Weber, Sr. of Texas, and David Young of R Ohio. Now, I have gone to our representative in the state of Wyoming, Senator Enzi, and Senator John Barrasso, and I look forward to their support on this bill too. And I wanted to also thank some of the supporters from around the country, and that was the Agricultural Retailers Association, American Farm Bureau Federation, American Phototechnics Association, Associated Equipment Distributors, Lucas Oil, National Association of Small Trucking Companies, OOIDA, Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, National Cotton Council, National Grain and Feed Association, National Hay Association, National Motorists Association, National Pork Producers, National Ready Mixed Concrete. Now, as you can tell, these are all trucking businesses that don't have, huge amounts of trucks. These are the small guys. That's us. I would like to also voice our support from Fuel Transport here in Casper, Wyoming, and many of our trucking buddies that also are owner-operator independent drivers. So with that, let's listen to Mr. Bibin's interview with a radio station out of Texas. I believe it was back in July that he did this interview. So let's listen up.
Landline now. Welcome back. We reported earlier this week about the introduction of a bill in Congress, H.R. 3282, the Electronic Logging Device Extension Act of 2017. The bill does precisely what its title suggests. It delays the date by which trucks must be outfitted with ELDs by 2 years, moving the deadline to December 2019. It was introduced by a U.S. representative named Brian Bibin out of Texas, a member of Congress with a clear understanding of the issues involved. I spoke with the congressman earlier about his bill, what it's designed to do, and why he introduced it. Well, Congressman, let's start with the basics here. Your bill is Hr-3282. What essentially does the bill do?
The bill will delay the implementation and the mandate that all truckers have to put what they call an ELD, an electronic logging device, into their vehicles. The ELD mandate is estimated to cost stakeholders, people who are in the business, more than $2 billion to comply with this thing. This makes this one of the most expensive federal transportation rules in the last 10 years. It's a massive unfunded mandate that provides really zero safety, economic, or productivity benefits. And I think the bottom line is that it's going to be very, very difficult for many of our truckers to implement this by the date that it's required at the present, which is December the 18th, 2017, this year.
Did the calls you got from truck drivers among your constituents play a role in your decision to introduce this bill?
Well, let me just say this. I used to be a truck driver at one time. I've done a lot of things in my career. I wound up a dentist, but at one time I started out driving a truck in the military, and also drove a lumber truck down in Texas, where I'm from. My heart goes out to these truckers. The profit margins are thin. These trucks are expensive. Insurance is high. Anything we can do to help that profit margin, make sure that they're doing, have safe practices on the highway. We definitely want to do that. But this ELD, electronic logging device, will cost a trucker anywhere from $1,200–1,400 all the way up to almost $4,000 a year. And again, like I said in our earlier conversation, we think it's going to be more than a $2 billion impact.
I'd like to ask you a little bit more about your trucking background, because it sounds like that played a big role in your decision-making here. You mentioned some of the things you hauled. What kind of a rig did you drive, or what kind of routes did you drive?
Well, I actually learned to drive a 10-ton truck in the military. We used to pick up tank hulks and clear these things out, and then I also drove it wasn't a big tractor-trailer rig as a lumber yard when I worked for a lumber company, but it was a big flatbed, and so I had a commercial driver's license for many years in the state of Texas. Even after I was a dentist, I still had a CDL. And then when they started requiring, what do they call it, hours?
Oh, the logbooks, hours of service.
Yes, yeah. When they started requiring continuing education and the logbooks and things like that, I finally let it go. So I have a big place in my heart for truck drivers.
Now, I'd asked you earlier, and you mentioned your trucking background. Have you heard from a lot of truckers about this issue?
Yes, sir, we have. We've heard from people very concerned that they were not going to make this deadline. And, it's going to be easy, I think, or let me just say this. It'll be easier for our large companies with great big fleets to comply with this as compared to someone who's got a single truck or just a few trucks in their fleet. It's the same thing in any business. A larger business, if you're a big bank, you can comply with some of the federal regulation a lot easier than you can if you're a small bank. And I think it's the same thing with our trucks. And we know that there has to be some safety operations and some safety features on our trucks. We want highway safety above all. However, this mandate, we can't seem to see how in the world this is going to improve safety It's certainly not going to be economic, and I think it's certainly going to harm productivity at this point in time. So we want to delay this for another 2 years, and that's exactly what this bill will do.
And very simply written bill, too. It's really just a few lines basically saying just that. Add 2 years to it.
That's right. Exactly right.
I wanted to ask you something else, Congressman, because we have seen a lot of hearings, oversight, appropriations hearings and so far over the past couple of years involving the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the primary agency regulating trucking. And it seems like we're seeing more and more instances of where your fellow members of Congress have been calling into question whether regulations are directly related to safety or effective at promoting safety. And certainly we've seen in Congress overall in the administration basically a greater willingness to look at regulations and potentially cut back on them. Do you see the ELD as part of a larger problem or part of a larger challenge that Congress needs to be more involved in?
You know what? Let me just, Mark, you hit the nail on the head there, because for 8 years under the previous administration, we have seen an enormous burgeoning of regulatory bureaucracy coming out of that administration, and on all levels, in all fields, and in all aspects of the federal government, not just in transportation, trucking. I mean, we've seen it in banks. We've seen it, in water control. We've seen the, in terms of ozone rules and regulations and other, like, I'll just give you an example. The Environmental Protection Agency coming up with some new rules for us to comply, with ozone, and they're increasing those standards to the point where it's going to be very, very difficult for many areas of the country to comply with them, and they're increasing the restrictions even before we've been able to comply with the previous new standards and restrictions. And so the new Congress this year, working hand in glove with our new president, President Trump, has had congressional review acts. We've rolled back, I think we've had 14 CRAs, congressional review acts, rolling back many of these late, what we call midnight rules that were that the previous administration had levied against American business and our economy in the latter just few days and weeks of their administration. We've rolled that back. We're constantly dealing with Environmental Protection Agency rules, with Internal Revenue Service. I mean, there's, you name it. The bureaucracies love to increase the rulemaking. Their rulemaking authority, I think, has gotten out of hand. And certainly, we want clean air. We want safe highways. We want clean water. We want honest and good banks that keep, a lot of capital on hand, an adequate amount. But the long and short of it is that when you have too much regulation, it costs jobs. It costs American jobs. It also costs companies. They can't comply. They have to. They're paying more taxes, more fees, and they have to lay people off. And then the next thing you know, they've moved overseas. And this is what the Trump administration is all about, and that is to deregulate while keeping, keeping the environment clean and all the things that we need to do. There has to be some common sense so that the American people will have the opportunity to have high, good-paying jobs with benefits and be able to live in a clean environment in a place where they've chosen to live.
Congressman, I want to ask you a couple of other questions, but But the most important one to me is, obviously you have a background in trucking that helps you understand this issue, but most members of Congress don't have that. As someone who's been both in trucking and Congress, what advice can you offer to truck drivers out there who call into their members of Congress in terms of getting their message about this or other trucking-related issues across? How would they go about? What is the best way for them to communicate that message?
Well, you know what they need to do? They need to call and tell their congressman that they are tax-paying citizens, they're raising their families, they're making their communities better places to live in, they have an honest, good job, they're moving our goods and our services across this country, and they want good highways and they want less government interference. They want the government to please get out of the way, let them do what they're trained to do. And, each one out there, call and ask their congressman to co-sponsor this bill, the Hr-3282, and call it the switchboard here at the Capitol, which is 202-224-3121, or they can go look them up on house.gov, house.gov, and they can send their message that way. And that's essentially it, Mark.
Do you see your bill potentially heading down the road toward a full repeal of the requirement for ELDs? As you know, since Congress put it in the first place, that would be what's needed. Do you think that is potentially in the future?
Well, you know what? I'm not going to venture to make a guess there. All I know is at this point in time, we can't comply. Most truckers, especially the small operators, medium-sized operators, are going to have a hard time complying with this. The large trucking companies, I think it's going to be an onerous task for them as well. It certainly won't hurt them as bad, though. But I think it's just going to remain to be seen, and that's why we're putting this off for another 24 months. And you know, I don't want to mislead anybody. I wasn't a career trucker. I learned to drive a truck in the military. I told you I was trained in a 10-ton truck, and I also trained in deuce and a half or 2.5-ton trucks, and did drive a lumber truck. But the long and short is that we don't need more regulatory bureaucracy, which drives jobs overseas and costs Americans their jobs. And it also curtails the availability of the American dream, the opportunity to be an entrepreneur and to start your own business, buy your own truck. Next thing you know, you got 2 trucks, and you're hiring a bunch of people to service those trucks and to drive them. And this is what America's all about. And so too much bureaucracy harms that American dream.
Congressman Bibin, thank you very much. We sure appreciate your time.
You bet, Mark. You have a good day.